They were out early one morning, panning in the stream for gold, surrounded by the rising mountains. Old prospector with a tale for two, he brushed around in the pan, pointing out what lay within was ordinary sand. He began with a story about 20 years before, and a younger man who sought his fortune. With a tear or two he told of searching for his treasure, but making known the gold he sought was ordinary pleasure. There were years of doing without, and there were years of plenty. He started thinking that life was never steady, excepting when the bills came in and he had no money to pay. Whiskey had never tasted better ordinarily. Concluded his story as it filled the air with a laugh, saying how he found the Lord and Savior, and how he found the river of life by which his day unfolds, and pointed out what stands within is not ordinary gold, and pointing out what stands within is not ordinary gold. Trust in God, believe upon His promises. Through His word we can see His wonders, signs and miracles of His love. We can return His love with devotion, standing on His word before all men. We are His beloved and His chosen, walking in this life renewed with peace. Trust in God, believe upon His promises. can see his wonders, signs and miracles of his love. We can return his love with devotion, standing on his word before all men. We are his beloved and his chosen, walking in this life renewed with peace. Trust in God, believe upon his promises. Trust in God, believe upon his promises. Believe upon his promises.
Well, hello, I'm Mark Wallace. This is True North Studio, and today the title is How to Inspire the Christ. Today we're going to talk about two women who caused the Christ to take a second look. Even though these ladies lived 880 years apart, they both exhibited the same singular quality that Jesus tried so hard to instill in his disciples. Preachers call it faith. Writers call it grit. Coaches call it intestinal fortitude. Dads call it guts. You may term it aggressive belief in action. Others may just call it love. Whatever you name it, it goes way beyond normal believing. These ladies figured out the precursor to the miraculous. They figured out our part in the prayer process. Let's unwrap the singular life lesson embedded in both their stories that will help us trust God enough to push through our own worst of times and bring home more than we came for. Let's see what these ladies did to inspire the Christ. Maybe it'll inspire us too. The widow from Zarephath, unbridled trust. Now both stories begin in the same coastal area in what was then the far northern reaches of Israel. It was a Mediterranean port city at the beginning of an east-west trade route that attracted a melting pot of cultures and religions, which can be both good and bad. This border area was so wild and unruly that it had never been fully incorporated by Israel, nor was it ever able to be absorbed into any other country for very long. It was a spiritual DMZ, a no man's land, a dystopian hellhole for the good people of Israel. Not an easy place to raise a family, and it still isn't. In about 850 BC, the country of Israel was no longer run by God-fearing kings like David and Solomon, but had recently split into two separate kingdoms. The southern kingdom was called Judea, and the northern kingdom kept the name of Israel. Israel's throne had been stolen by a couple of the evilest people who ever walked the earth, Ahab and Jezebel. They both wanted to change the culture and religion of Israel to be more like the nations that surrounded them, and they would go to any length to make it happen. To accomplish that, they were hell-bent on killing anyone with the Spirit of God. They attempted a spiritual genocide that hadn't been tried since before the Great Flood. Not only was Jezebel killing off the true prophets of God, but she and Ahab were setting up the popular culture of Baal worship in Israel to distract others from even aspiring to take a stand for God. They loved Baal's allure of untethered sex, child sacrifice, self-mutilation, especially because all the popular countries were doing it. Quote, the men of Israel began to indulge in sexual immorality with Moabite women who invited them to the sacrifices to their gods. Numbers 25, 1 and 2. Sex as part of the religious service made it easy to get young men to attend. Jezebel was using the popularity and enticement of Baal worship to turn Israel into a culture just like the one she was raised in. She was raised in that unruly area called Sidon. Now, does your country allow sex trafficking? Are children disappearing? Do leaders tell you that the mutilation of one's body is normal? Has it pushed hard to make people accept things that were once taboo? If so, we once again may be experiencing the reemergence of Baal worship, only we would never call it that today. 1 Kings 16:30, and Ahab the son of Omri did evil in the sight of the Lord, above all that were before him. King Ahab was pure evil. Our first story begins at this dark and dire time in Israel's history, and the good people were at their wits' end physically, spiritually, and financially. Suffering people are much easier to control. The people of the northeast Mediterranean were becoming poor by the day, starving and desperate. And to top that off, they were deep into what would become a 3.5-year drought, which means no rain, no water, no crops, no food, and a likely death for the regular people. Basically, if you didn't have money or political connections, if your belief in God was fading, you were probably going to die. Now here's how the drama unfolded. 1 Kings 17:1. And Elijah the Tishbite, who was of the inhabitants of Gilead, said unto King Ahab, As the Lord of God of Israel liveth, before whom I stand, there shall not be dew nor rain these years, but according to my word. The prophet Elijah was bold enough to inform the corrupt King Ahab that there was going to be a drought of droughts and a famine of famines, unless the king listened to him. The moment Elijah told this unpopular news to the king of Israel, a man who was openly dominated by his even more evil wife Jezebel, the prophet was told told by God to run like the wind. Elijah ran. He became a fugitive. Sometimes we fight, other times we run, but never do we quit. 1 Kings 17:5 from the Message. Elijah obeyed God's orders. He went and camped in the Kerith Canyon on the other side of the Jordan. And sure enough, ravens brought him his meals, both breakfast and supper, and he drank from the brook. Now God has a way of caring for us even when life seems impossible. God sent Elijah to hide out in the wilderness, near where he had played as a kid, to camouflage himself in a ravine deep in the boonies. All Elijah's food was supplied by what a flock of ravens dropped off to him twice a day. These birds are keen-eyed hunters and scavengers. They eat nuts, berries, grasshoppers, small animals, people scraps, and roadkill. Imagine what bits of food were dropped off for Elijah to pick through. Did you know that ravens can remember faces for years and will bring gifts to people who were once nice to them? God provides in strange ways sometimes. 1 Kings 17:7. Eventually the brook dried up because of the drought. Then God spoke to him, Get up and go to Zarephath in Sidon and live there. I've instructed a woman who lives there, a widow, to feed you. When the small stream in the shaded gully dried up, God told Elijah to make a dangerous 4 or 5 day hike up to that crazy city in Sidon. God also told him that a widow, a single mom, had been charged by God to feed him. Now there are a few problems here. One, Elijah had to believe for God to show him how to hike undetected up to Sidon, which will take 4 or 5 days during a severe drought with no food or water, while Jezebel's hit squad is searching for him. 2, Sidon was considered the Wild Wild West. 3, some poor husbandless widow had been tasked by God to feed the prophet. 4, he also knew that Sidon was the hometown of the evil queen Jezebel and that her father was the Baal-worshiping king of that city. He had the power of life and death over every citizen, and he used it. Quote, King Ahab took to wife Jezebel, the daughter of Ethbaal, king of the Zidonians, king of Sidon, and went and served Baal and worshiped him. 1 Kings 16:31. God had Elijah head up to Jezebel's old stomping grounds to evade capture. This is called hiding in plain sight. Elijah obeyed. Now, did any of you notice that the king's name was Ethbaal? That it has Baal in it? Who would name their child after a pagan god? But who am I to talk? My name is Mark, which means Mars, the god of war. What are you going to do? How's God going to work out this impossible situation? When Josephine and I were part of another ministry, we gladly moved 27 times over 30 years. Most of those relocations were paid for with our own money. Usually we pulled our fully loaded U-Haul rental truck up into our new city, having no job, no income, no home, and 2 kids. Now for us, it was always an adventure to see how God would take care of us this time. He always did. Some of you helped us too, and we never went without. Elijah knew that if he just did what God said, he would be okay. It may not make sense at the time, but with God, it always works out. I love how God inspired 2 strangers, both hungry, both penniless, to somehow meet up in an extremely wicked city and help each other make it through the day. Now all they had to do was find each other. But one wrong move and things would go sideways. Now you've seen enough post-apocalyptic type movies to understand the desperation of a man wandering across the devastated countryside, running from someone or something, trying to kill him, just wanting to stay alive, then finding a random stranger, someone willing to share what little she had in hopes that he in turn would protect her. That's the feeling here. That's the feeling here. That's the life of Elijah and this widowed single mom. They each knew that God was going to send someone to help them, but neither had any idea what that other person looked like. One mistake could get them both killed. Revelation from God usually comes in bite-sized chunks, as we're willing or able to handle it. Those bits of revelation become our godly breadcrumb trail. The interaction between Elijah and this widow is going to be a cat and mouse game for a quick minute, like 2 cats circling each other, sizing each other up. 1 Kings 17:10, so he arose and went to Zarephath. And when he came to the gate of the city, behold, the widow woman was there gathering of sticks. And he called to her and said, "Fetch me, I pray thee, a little water in a vessel that I might drink." Watch how God sets the scene. While scavenging for firewood, this destitute woman encounters a stranger, Elijah, who asks her for a drink. Now she had no idea who he was. Maybe he's the one God told her about, but maybe not. Also, Elijah had to find the lady God mentioned to him, the woman who would feed him. The girl who would feed him. She wasn't wearing a puffy white baker's hat and an apron so he would notice her, nor did he have a "Hello, my name is Elijah the Prophet" name tag. Imagine having to trust a random townsperson in a hostile area. Now, those of you who've served in Vietnam, Iraq, or Afghanistan know exactly how it would feel to have to depend on an unknown, unvetted, local woman for survival. Plus, how dangerous would it be for a poor single mom to put all her trust in some stranger? Elijah asked this poor lady to bring him a little water. Now, there was nothing wrong with a man asking a woman for a drink. It was culture. Jesus did it in the Gospels. See, his request was the test. 1 Kings 17:11. And as she was going to fetch it, the water, he called unto her and said, "Oh, bring me, I pray thee, a morsel of bread in thine hand." I love how as she's walking away to fetch him some water, he adds in a piece of bread to his request. He probably hadn't eaten much in 4 or 5 days. On one of my multi-hour mountain trail runs, a crazy-eyed runner with cracked lips wobbled up to me and gasped, "Thank God!" He asked me for water, and as quick as a flash, he snatched the water bottle out of my hand and squirted a quick stream into his open mouth. then handed it back. I didn't mind. I could see the runner was desperate. Probably had gotten lost and ran out of water hours ago. As the widow was walking away to fetch him some water, Elijah pulls a Columbo. Oh, one more thing. While you're out getting me some water, would you mind bringing me back a little something to snack on? I'm a bit famished here. Now here's where Elijah finds out this lady is the one. Verse 12. And she said, as the Lord thy God liveth, I have not a cake, but a handful of meal in a barrel, and a little oil in a cruse. And behold, I am gathering 2 sticks, that I may go in and dress it for me and my son, that we may eat it and die. Now those are some desperate words. Now I'll be happy to bring you some water, but I don't have any extra food. After my son and I eat our last little bit of bread, we're probably going to just sit down and die. Now she and her son were already starving to death, or close to it. Now watch how Elijah doesn't give in to what seems like a sob story. Like you, he had seen God come through way too many times. After all, he had just been fed by a flock of philanthropic ravens. Plus, he better find the right widow and find her quick. By hanging out at the city gate, Elijah's in a very exposed position. If you think about it, maybe she's also testing Elijah with her words to see if he's the one that God told her about. Remember, God gave them both the assignment to find and help each other. She too must be very careful who she lets into her life. Now, I love it. It'll be fun to see how God has already worked out these intersecting storylines. 13, and Elijah said unto her, fear not. Now I ask you, how many of great events in the Bible have been preceded by the words, fear not? The words fear not and be not afraid are used over 100 times in the King James Version. Verse 13 continued, fear not, go and do as thou hast said, but make me thereof a little cake first. Make me a cake first, and bring it unto me. And after you have fed me, then go back and make for thee and for thy son. Now she braced herself. Was he the prophet, or was he a scoundrel? Now here comes her answer. Verse 14, for thus saith the Lord God of Israel, the barrel of meal shall not waste, neither shall the cruse of oil fail, until the day that the Lord sendeth rain upon the earth. Her heart leapt. That's what she was wanting to hear. It sure sounds like he's the one. Sure sounds like God. Sure sounds like the prophet. Wouldn't that sound pretty good to a starving and desperate mom? That's exactly what she needed to hear from Elijah to prove he was the one who would help her and her son. He says that my grain and oil will not run out until the rains come back. Thanks, God. Have you ever found bags of groceries on your porch when you were struggling? Have you ever received an unexpected check in the mail? Did a complete stranger ever walk up and hand you money and walk away? Life is full of random miracles. We've all had random strangers help us at times, but this single decision is life and death for this lady and her son. Is he really the man that God told her about? Also, Elijah had that single moment to decide if this is the woman God told him about. If not, he's dead. He's dead. 1 Kings 17:15, and she went and did according to the saying of Elijah. And she and he and her house did eat many days. 16, and the barrel of meal wasted not, neither did the cruse or the container of oil fail, according to the word of the Lord, which he spake by Elijah. For much of that 3.5-year drought, the jar of olive oil and the barrel of grain never diminished. As fast as they used it, it replenished. Talk about an extended miracle? Here's a fun fact. Did you know that olive oil is great for starving people? It provides calorie-dense nutrition, suppresses hunger pangs, and adds much-needed healthy fats. It's also used for oil lamps in homes. This unnamed single mother gave the prophet a place to hide from Jezebel's kill order, right under the nose of Jezebel's evil father, the king of Sidon. We also know that she and her son kept their mouths shut, never telling anyone about Elijah and the reappearing food. Imagine if other starving people heard about their never-ending supply. God put these two people together to help each other out during the very worst of times. Have you ever had somebody like that? Have you ever had someone who reached out to you during your darkest hours and helped you? I sure have. And some of you are that person. Together, the three of them lived through the famine and evaded the global manhunt. Now, an indirect accomplishment of this unlikely union happened soon after Elijah finally left her place. Elijah found 100 other prophets who had been hidden in caves and fed by King Ahab's right-hand man named Obadiah. Remember, Jezebel was trying to kill everybody who had the Spirit of God. Obadiah saved them. Important side note, the only way to fully control the world is to kill or silence all the men and women with the Spirit of God. Why do you think so many world leaders still try to imprison or kill or silence Christians? Don't let anyone dull your shine. But wait, there's more to this story. Almost 900 years in the future, one of the very first people Jesus talks about during his very first teachings in his hometown of Nazareth, just after receiving Holy Spirit, right after fasting for 40 days, after his trials and temptations in the wilderness, was to mention this amazing widow woman from Sidon. Luke 4:25, Jesus said, "But I tell you of a truth. Many widows were in Israel in the days of Elias or Elijah, when the heaven was shut up for 3 years and 6 months. That means no rain. When the great famine was throughout all the land. But unto none of them was Elias sent, save unto Sarepta, a city of Sidon, unto a woman that was a widow." Now, this remarkable woman is never even named in the Bible, but she greatly inspired Jesus. But the religious leaders and townspeople of Nazareth responded to Jesus with the same hatred that Jezebel wanted to show Elijah. Probably some of the same spirits were reactivated. Luke 4:28 from the TPT. When everyone present heard Jesus' words, they erupted with furious rage. They mobbed Jesus and threw him out of the city, dragging him to the edge of the cliff on the hill on which the city had been built, ready to hurl him off. But he walked right through the crowd, leaving them all stunned. Like the super-possessed Jezebel, the spirits that influenced the crowd in Nazareth must have been the same ones that had driven Jezebel and her converts to try and viciously kill all the prophets. The townspeople of Nazareth responded to Jesus' first teaching by trying to kill him. Imagine? Verse 28 says that everyone present attacked Jesus. I would imagine Jesus' family were part of that crowd. Wouldn't you attend your son's first public teaching in your city? Sadly, we know that his brothers didn't like what he was doing, nor did they trust Jesus' fast-growing ministry, Mark 3 and John 7. Now back to our story. That famine went on for 3.5 years, and so did the miraculous daily reappearing of grain and oil in the woman's storage containers. Where do you think Jesus got the idea of feeding 5,000, later on feeding 4,000 people with just a couple of loaves of bread? What a great example this unnamed woman and the prophet were to Jesus. In the midst of her own personal hell, she was still able to hear the voice of God and help the prophet. And Elijah was there to help her and her son. When you're going through hell, just keep going. God will always be there to pick up the slack as you keep moving and keep believing. Her example was one of Jesus' first teaching illustrations. She inspired the Christ. The other woman from Sidon, fight for what you want. Finally, we'll cover a record that's so timely, I might have to push back a tear. This is a lesson to remember when you feel like the whole world is against you, both God and man. And we've all felt that way at times. Matthew 15:21, then Jesus went thence and departed into the coast of Tyre and Sidon. Sidon. This is the same area that we just spoke about in the last record. But now it's 880 years later. And don't you think Jesus thought about Elijah and the widow woman when he was in that area? Yeah. Once again, Tyre and Sidon are neighboring cities at the very northern border of Israel in a high traffic area that feels the splash of the Mediterranean Sea. It was still an unruly area of Israel even after 800 years. It still felt a little like the cowboy days of the American frontier, but it was now under Roman control. But even they couldn't fully control it. Matthew 15:22, and behold, a woman of Canaan came out of the same coast and cried unto him, Jesus, saying, Have mercy on me, O Lord, thou son of David. My daughter is grievously vexed with the devil. Now, most moms would never want to admit that their child has spiritual problems, but she was at her wit's end. You know, this desperate mother started following Jesus and the apostles around town, pleading for Jesus to help her. Matthew calls her a woman of Canaan, which means he considered her a rank unbeliever, or so he thought. Mark 7:26 calls her a Syrophoenician, which means she was of mixed race and mixed religion. So, to the Judeans, she was a mongrel. Now, what's impressive is that this non-Judean woman called Jesus the Son of David, which tells us that she considered him to be the promised Messiah of Israel, that she had heard so much about. But to the apostles, she was like having a crazed zombie following them around. She looked different, dressed different, believes different, and she has a funny accent. She was an outsider. She'd lived around Judeans long enough to know that she wasn't going to be easily welcomed by Jesus and his apostles. She also decided that no one was going to stop her from getting help for her demented daughter. Not today. Not today. How bad do you want something? How bad do you want something? Obviously, nothing else had worked for her up to this point, so she set aside her pagan beliefs and went directly to the Christ. He was her last resort. The fact this mom knew her daughter was vexed with the devil, grievously vexed, tells us that it didn't take discerning of spirits to realize that her kid was possessed. When Josephine was a substitute teacher in Cleveland, one of her third grade students stood up and started throwing desks around the classroom with otherworldly strength. She confronted him, and he stared her in the eyes, smiled, and said, "You can't stop me." Josephine did stop him. That kid had opened up to something dark. 9 months into one of Josephine's pregnancies, she went with our son, Adam, on a school field trip. One little boy walked up to her, placed his tiny little hand on her bulging belly, and said, "Your baby's dead." Then he turned and ran back to play with the kids. And it's kind of weird. Now, 2 days later, she gave birth to a full-term, stillborn baby. Our doctor said the child died in the womb 2 days earlier, the same day that kid had touched her. How would the kid have known? Where did the kid get that information? Just because the person is an innocent child doesn't mean they don't have adult-sized spiritual problems. Now, I got a million other stories to share, but too little time. Well, this desperate mom from Sidon knew something was dangerously wrong with her daughter. She'd seen Jesus come to town and do miracles. She'd heard about him healing other people with deep spiritual problems. She asked Jesus for help. Matthew 15:23, but he, Jesus, answered her not a word. Jesus answered her not a word. Imagine Jesus totally ignoring you like you don't even exist. Have you ever felt like an outsider because of something you've done in the past? Because of your clothing? Or worse, because of who you were born? Ever been attacked because of the way you look? Here's a good one. Have you ever felt like an outsider because of the religion your parents raised you in? Thinking you're different, that you've been somehow shortchanged in life, is a sad place to live. It's a sad place to live. Watch how Jesus and this lady deal with the type of discrimination that was deeply embedded in the laws and culture of Judean society at that time. It may surprise you. Mark interjects, 7:26, The woman was a Greek, a Syrophoenician by nation, and she besought him that he would cast forth the devil out of her daughter. Now, calling someone a Greek is a nice way to say unbeliever, indicating that her first language was probably Greek and not Aramaic. So she was harder to understand. Syrophoenician means she was of Canaanite descent and a native of the Phoenician seaboard in the region we now call Syria. Together, those words place her in the alien from Mars category to the apostles. Mark 7:26 also says that this mixed race, Greek-speaking, pagan, unbeliever woman besought him, which in the Greek means she boldly demanded something from Jesus. She boldly demanded something from Jesus and fully expected an answer. She's pushing hard like single moms do. She's asking the Christ a very blunt question. The woman says, "So they say you're the healer, the Savior to the world, they say. So how about helping me? I see you helping hundreds of people. I see the miracles. All I ask is for you to help my daughter. She needs some big-time help, sir." She's not the professional beggar we see at traffic lights. She's the voice of a desperately focused mother with a very sick child. Matthew 15:23 continues, "And his disciples came and besought him," Jesus, saying, "Send her away, for she crieth, she yells after us." First, Jesus totally ignores the lady. Now the apostles beg Jesus to please get rid of her. She can hear them talking. She's standing right there. How would you feel? How would you feel? Have you ever been publicly rejected and alienated by religious people? The words the disciples used, "she crieth after us," is the Greek word krazo, which is a word that imitates the obnoxious croak of a raven. This mom yelled so loud and so often to get Jesus' attention that her voice had gone gravelly and was cracking. Maybe other people in the crowd were trying to get Jesus' attention too. So she had to be loud. "Jesus, please help me! Please help my daughter! She has an evil spirit." No mother wants to say that. No parent wants to admit that. Some people think it's a reflection on them as parents. But this woman was way past the point of caring what others thought. Imagine this loud, different-looking woman with a weird accent following you around town as you were witnessing, demanding you help her demented daughter. Imagine her busting into your church or fellowship, running down the aisle, falling on her knees, and screaming at the pastor for help. I guarantee she'd be quickly escorted out by well-armed church security. Let me tell you. Matthew 15:24. "But she answered and said," Jesus answered and said, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel." So Jesus finally answered her, but it's not the answer she wanted to hear. It was true that Jesus was sent to take care of the lost sheep, the children of Israel who had lost their way. Matthew 10:6 says, everyone knew it, but this lady thought way outside the flock. She was first ignored by Jesus himself. Then she was told to hit the road by the disciples. Now Jesus tells her she isn't part of the club and isn't invited to the party. How would you feel if the Christ rejected you to your face? How would you feel? As harsh as it seems, Jesus was telling the truth. She didn't belong to the children of Israel. If you've ever been rejected by a church or ministry or religious group or by family, by people who talk about God's love all the time, but only show it to the people they like, then you know what a spiritual outsider feels like. Having a daughter who acted out her crazy, she knew the blow-off game. This was not her first rodeo, but her love for her child. Her love for her child was bigger than religious prejudice. How bad do you really want something? How bad do you really want something? How hard are you willing to push for it? This desperate mother, who only wanted help for her spiritually tormented daughter, assumed that God was big enough for everyone, even if these men, including Jesus, didn't see it yet. Mark 7:24 tells us that Jesus was then whisked away into a hideout, a safe house, to protect him from the growing crowd of people, especially from this crazy lady. But she found him. Oh yeah, she found him anyway. He entered a house. He entered a house there where he didn't think he would be found, but he couldn't escape notice. He was barely inside when a woman who had a disturbed daughter heard where he was. That's Mark 7:24. Now I ask you, how much abuse are you willing to take to get what you really want in life? How much abuse are you willing to take to get what you want in life? Many times that is the attitude that determines your deliverance. Matthew 15:25. Then came she and worshipped him, saying, Lord, help me. Somehow this woman crashed the gates of his hideout, got past security, that's the apostles, and burst into Jesus' room and threw herself on the floor at his feet. This was very dramatic and very inappropriate. That took some giant lady balls. This mixed-race, Gentile, unbeliever mongrel of a woman with a hoarse voice and a funny accent looked up at Jesus and begged him, Lord, help me, help my daughter, please, help me. Her voice is almost gone by now, but her heart was still on a mission. 26, but he answered and said, it's not meet, it's not appropriate to take the children's bread and cast it to dogs. Did Jesus just call her a dog? I think he did. Imagine that. Jesus said, we don't feed stray dogs in this house. You don't belong here. Most people would have quit by now, but not her. Not her. When you're going through hell, what do? You keep going. How hard are you willing to grind to reach the finish line? Being called a dog was a big cut in first century Israel, much more than it is now. Today we love our dogs. People treat their dogs like family. Being called a dog can even be a term of endearment in America, especially if you're a rapper or a Cleveland Browns fan. But in first century Israel, a dog was never a pet. A full-grown dog was never allowed in the house. Roving packs of dogs could be dangerous. They were unwelcome scavengers. They ate from giant garbage heaps outside the city walls. If the opportunity presented itself, dogs would even eat human remains or chew on the legs of the crucified. Dogs were considered filthy. Nobody had dogs for pets in Israel. Nobody. A full-grown dog was rejected by polite Judean society. But here comes a big lesson in believing, folks. Now I'm going to throw you a big fat curveball that's easy to hit. The word dogs in this interchange is actually the word puppy. Yes, puppy. Jesus called this woman a pup. Now, that's a little different than being called a full-grown lady dog. I just told you that the good people of Israel would never allow dogs in their house, but that's only partially true. Parents did allow puppies to come inside the courtyard and play with the kids. But when those dogs grew up, they were no longer allowed in the house. Jesus calling this woman a puppy is a little different than being called a dog. Now this determined woman uses Jesus' puppy example as fuel to strengthen her case. I love it. Talk about thinking fast. Watch what she does. I love how she does not quit. She doesn't lose focus on her dream, her need, on her daughter's healing. It's a big, big, big lesson. Matthew 15:27. And she said, truth, Lord, yet the dogs or the puppies eat of the crumbs which fall from their master's table or from the kids' table. Mark 7:28 tells us that those puppy masters were the children. Even Jesus could still visualize 5 or 6 puppies with wagging tails, soft little paws, and licking tongues playing with him and his siblings during a tea party or an afternoon snack. Jesus and his siblings were once those kids. This woman knew this about Israel. I love the verbal exchange and the mental imagery here. She's going tit for tat with the master. She's going tit for tat with the master. Nobody on earth had a quicker mind than the Christ, but this lady's not missing a verbal step. Even the devil during the temptations couldn't keep up with Jesus. This mom is totally tracking with the Christ in his repartee, flowing with his wordplay. She is totally in sync with the Christ. Another key here, folks. Jesus seemed to be enjoying this exchange. She's got to be fully engaged if she's going to convince Jesus to heal her demented daughter. As emotional and rejected and victimized as she may have felt a few months before, she buried that thought. She tucked it away. She allowed her love for her daughter to outweigh any negatives. That mom loved her kid. That's the power of a mother's love. Matthew 15:28. Then Jesus answered and said unto her, Oh, woman, great is thy faith. You got some big believing, girl. Be it unto thee even as thou wilt. And her daughter was made whole from that very hour. That woman's child got healed the second her believing meshed with the Christ, and vice versa. This interchange broke culture, it superseded tradition, and her sneaking into his room shattered the social norms, much like Elijah living under the same roof with a single mom who wasn't his wife. Now Jesus called this amazing lady an endearing term. Instead of dog, he now calls her woman and mother. He now treats her like the person that she was. Jesus finally saw beyond her looks, past her race, beneath her culture, and even above her religion. He noticed in her the one thing that separates the haves from the have-nots: aggressive, believing action. Jesus pointed out the single trait that it takes for any of us, any mom, any person to get what they came for, and that is faith, grit, or conviction. Let's just call it believing. To maintain focus on your goal, even while taking a beating, especially while taking a beating, is the big lesson here. Grit gets rewarded. To see yourself or to see others beyond their skin color or religion or culture or background or looks or accent or their wild children, and to notice their believing is also the lesson. Aggressive believing action is always the formula to success. It's always the formula to success, no matter where you come from or how crazy your kids may seem at the time. To stay focused and to keep showing up, no matter what, is the key to success. If you know it's yours, don't take no for an answer. Keep pushing. Never stop until you get what you came for. Keep pushing until someone calls security, and then push past security. She did. People with grit get what they came for. People with faith never fail. People who believe always receive. She inspired the Christ. She inspired the Christ. The lesson. The first mom from the Sidon area did exactly what God asked her to do. She fed the man of God Elijah and then hid him from wicked Jezebel and her father. In return, he believed God to miraculously feed her and her son for around 3 years. Her hospitality towards a man with the Spirit of God saved herself, her son, and Elijah. So impressive was her trust and believing that Jesus used this widow as one of his very first teaching examples. Jesus was also fascinated with the believing boldness of that second single mom from Sidon, the one we just dealt with. She didn't let anything, or anyone, and I mean anyone, stop her from getting the help she needed for her vexed child. She leaped over religious barriers, sidestepped rejection, and crashed through cultural barricades. And because of her brash style of believing, Jesus healed her tormented daughter. She impressed the Christ with her impressive wit and tenacious grit. They both exhibited the same core quality that Jesus tried so hard to instill in his disciples. These two amazing ladies remind me of you. You go to God. You never give up. You never quit. You never say never. And you're sort of fun to be with. These ladies figured out the singular quality that precedes the miraculous. They didn't just hope and pray things would get better. They acted out their part in the prayer and believing process with focused determination. No matter what hell is breaking loose around us, within us, or to our families, we trust God, push like never before, and we fully expect to receive. That, my friends, is how to inspire the Christ. God bless you all.